Have you ever heard someone say, "That's karma"? Usually, people say this when someone does something bad, and later something bad happens to that person. For example, someone takes a friend's toy without asking, and after a while they lose something important. Then people quickly think, "See, that was karma." Often, karma is seen as a kind of invisible force or universal police that punishes bad actions and rewards good ones. It's as if there's a list up in the sky where all the good and bad things we do are written down, and then someone decides what should happen to us. This makes karma seem like a form of revenge or justice that brings balance to everything that happens in the world. For example, imagine someone robs a bank and gets away with it. People immediately say, "Oh, karma will catch up with that person." They believe that sooner or later, something bad will happen to the thief, like losing all the money or facing another type of punishment. But does karma really work that way? Is there really some force out there watching and punishing those who do wrong? This is a very common idea, but it's far from the true meaning of karma. In reality, karma has nothing to do with someone punishing or rewarding you. It works in a much deeper and, at the same time, simpler way. Karma is a word that comes from Sanskrit, a very ancient language from the East, and it means action. That's right, karma isn't something that happens to you, it's something that you do. Every action you take, whether big or small, has a consequence. And most importantly, the consequences aren't always external things like a punishment that appears outside of you. Many times the consequences are within you, in your thoughts, emotions, and the way you feel. That's why understanding what karma really is goes far beyond the idea of punishment or reward. Karma is present in every choice you make, in the way you treat people, and even in your most secret thoughts. It's happening all the time, even if you don't realize it. In this video, I'm going to explain the true meaning of karma, where it comes from, and how it affects your life every single day. We'll see how your actions and choices, even the smallest ones, can make you suffer or be happy without you even realizing it. And the most interesting part, karma also shows you how you can step out of this cycle of suffering and find more peace in your life. Let's start at the beginning. What is karma really, and how does it work? I'm going to show you now. Karma is a word that comes from Sanskrit, a very ancient language used in India, and it means action. That's right, karma has nothing to do with magic, divine punishments, or someone keeping track of everything you do to decide whether you deserve to be punished or rewarded. Karma is much simpler and, at the same time, much deeper. It is the direct consequence of everything you do, say, or even think. Let's imagine the following. You throw a stone into the water. When the stone falls, it creates small ripples that spread out in all directions. Those ripples are the consequences of your action. The stone was the cause, and the ripples are the effect. That is karma in action. Everything you do, think, or say has the same effect. It might seem like a small action, but it creates consequences that can spread in ways you can't even imagine. But here's the most important detail. Karma is not limited to your visible actions. It also happens in your thoughts and intentions. Sometimes you might think that what's in your mind doesn't matter because no one else can see or hear it. But that's not true. Your thoughts and intentions affect how you feel, how you treat others, and, most importantly, how you see yourself. Let's use a simple example. Imagine you get angry at a coworker because they received a compliment you think you deserved. You don't say anything, you don't do anything, but inside you're full of anger, envy, and resentment. That anger creates a bad feeling in your body and mind. Maybe you spend the rest of the day irritated, unable to focus. Maybe you go home tired and, without realizing it, take out that irritation on someone who has nothing to do with it, like your family or friends. What happened here? Your internal action, your thought filled with anger and resentment, created a chain of negative consequences. Even though no one saw or heard what was happening in your mind, karma had already started to act. And it didn't come from outside. It came from within you. This leads us to the most interesting point about karma. It is not a punishment or a reward that happens in the future. It happens immediately within you. When you act with anger, selfishness, envy, or any negative feeling, the first person to suffer is yourself. It's like throwing dust into the wind. The dust won't hit anyone else. It comes right back into your face. On the other hand, think about a moment when you did something genuinely good for someone. Not because you wanted something in return, but because you truly wanted to help. Maybe you offered help to a friend without expecting recognition, or you were kind to a stranger for no reason at all. How did you feel? Probably peaceful, calm, maybe even happy. That is the natural consequence of a good action. Karma, then, is a natural law of cause and effect. It works all the time, everywhere, with everyone. No one is outside of this law. Every action, thought, or word you put into the world creates an effect. That effect can be good or bad, and it always starts from the inside out. Now, here's something to reflect on. If karma also happens in your thoughts and intentions, how many times do you create negative karma without even realizing it? For example, when you silently judge someone, when you lie to yourself, or when you hold on to resentment about something that happened years ago. Sometimes it's like we are planting bad seeds without noticing, and then we wonder why our lives are full of difficulties, stress, or sadness. That's why understanding the true meaning of karma is so important. It's not about waiting for punishments or rewards in the future. It's about realizing that every little choice you make, whether in what you say, what you do, or what you think, is shaping the quality of your life. If you act with kindness, generosity, and honesty, the natural consequences will be peace, balance, and harmony. But if you act with selfishness, anger, or manipulation, the consequences will come in the form of suffering, anxiety, and frustration. Karma is not an external force. It is you. It is in your choices and in the impact of those choices, both inside and outside of you. In the next section, we will talk about the real consequences of karma and how it directly affects your mind and emotions every day. You'll see how even the smallest things that seem harmless can have a huge impact. Now that you understand that karma means action and that it happens all the time, let's talk about the real consequences of karma. Most people believe that karma's consequences are things that happen in the future, like external punishments. But, in reality, the most powerful consequences happen inside you, and they happen immediately from the moment you act, think, or speak. Imagine you tell a small lie. First, it seems like nothing happened. Nobody noticed, and you think you got away with it. But what really happens inside you? Maybe you start to feel a small discomfort, a sense of guilt or fear. Even if you try to ignore it, your mind doesn't forget. Deep down, you know you did something wrong, and this creates a tension that stays inside you. What is this tension? It's the result of karma. It's your own body and mind reacting to the action you took. Even a simple action like silently judging someone can create this tension. For example, you see someone wearing clothes you don't like and think, "What an ugly outfit." The person doesn't know you thought this, but you know. And the moment you think something negative, the first consequence appears. Your mood becomes a little heavier. Your mind loses a bit of its peace, and without realizing it, you already start to feel worse. Now think about this on a larger scale. When you spend the entire day acting selfishly, with anger, envy, or resentment, it's as if you are collecting small stones in an invisible backpack. Each stone represents a negative thought or action, and by the end of the day, this backpack is so heavy that you feel tired, stressed, and drained of energy. And here's the problem. Many people think that this tiredness, sadness, or anxiety is caused by the outside world, by their boss, by traffic, by money, or by the people around them. But, in reality, a large part of this suffering comes from their own actions, thoughts, and words accumulated throughout the day. This is the true effect of karma. The inner suffering that arises from the choices we make. Let me give you another practical example. Imagine you're in traffic and someone cuts you off. You feel angry, honk your horn, and maybe even yell at the person. In the moment, it feels like that relieves your frustration. But what really happened? Your anger didn't affect the other person, who has already driven away and probably didn't even hear you. The anger stayed inside you. Your heart raced, your body tensed up, and your mood was ruined. Later you might come home irritated and take that anger out on someone who had nothing to do with what happened. Do you see how this works? A small action or negative thought created a chain reaction that brought suffering to you and those around you. This happens every day, in both big and small situations, without us even realizing it. The same thing happens when you act with envy. Maybe a coworker gets promoted and you think, Why did they get it and not me? That thought, no matter how small, begins to eat away at your peace. Instead of focusing on your own growth, you become trapped in a cycle of resentment. This doesn't affect your coworker at all, but it deeply affects you. Your motivation drops, your mood worsens, and, in the end, the only person who suffers is you. And here's what's even more interesting. People often think that suffering only happens when something big goes wrong. They believe negative karma is just about losing money, suffering an accident, or experiencing a major sadness. But true suffering begins with the small things. It's the negative thoughts, the little lies, the silent judgments, and the selfish actions of everyday life that, little by little, turn your life into a cycle of stress, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. On the other hand, positive karma works the same way. When you act with kindness, generosity, or patience, the consequences also appear immediately within you. If you help someone without expecting anything in return, you feel a sense of peace and satisfaction. If you choose to forgive someone instead of holding on to anger, the first person who feels relief is you. That's why understanding karma's consequences is such an important step to break this cycle of suffering. Every time you feel anger, envy, or resentment, stop for a moment and observe what's happening inside you. Ask yourself, is this helping me or is it hurting me? Many times, just that pause is enough to change your behavior and prevent negative karma from continuing to build up. Now that you understand how karma works and how it affects you internally, let's talk about the origin of this cycle of suffering. The answer lies in something that we all carry, but rarely notice: the ego. What is the ego? The ego is that voice in your head that says, I am this, I deserve that, why did this happen to me? The ego is your identity. Everything you believe you are. It's the image you have of yourself. Your name, your achievements, your problems, your opinions, and everything you feel you need to protect and value. Here's the problem. The ego is always concerned with protecting and promoting itself. It wants you to feel important, secure, and superior to others. Because of this, the ego makes you act selfishly, even when you don't realize it. It's as if it whispers in your ear. You need to look out for yourself before anything else. The world is dangerous, and you can't lose. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you're in a meeting at work, and a colleague presents an incredible idea. Everyone praises their work, and immediately, the voice of the ego appears. What about you? Why didn't anyone praise what you did? You deserve more attention. This makes you feel anger, envy, or resentment. You might even start to look for flaws in your colleague's work just to make yourself feel better. What happened here? The ego wanted to protect your image, but in the process, it created suffering for you. This is the cycle of negative karma. The ego makes you act based on fear, insecurity, and the need to feel more important or safer than others. Even though these actions might seem insignificant, like a silent thought of envy or a quiet criticism, they create immediate consequences within you. Let's think about another example. Imagine you're arguing with a family member. You know the argument isn't going anywhere, but the ego insists. You can't let this person win the argument. If you lose, they'll think you're weak. So, you keep arguing, you raise your voice, and maybe you say things you'll regret later. When the argument ends, what's left? Maybe you won the argument, but inside you feel guilt, anger, and a sadness that didn't exist before. The ego made you act to protect your image, but the result was even more suffering. And here's the hardest truth to hear. The ego is present in almost everything we do. It's behind our decisions, our thoughts, and our daily actions. When you compare yourself to someone and feel that you're not good enough, that's the ego acting. When you lie to protect your reputation, that's the ego acting. When you get irritated because someone didn't do what you wanted, that's the ego acting. The worst part is that the ego is never satisfied. It always wants more. More security, more recognition, more control. And the more you feed the ego, the heavier the negative karma becomes, because you stay trapped in this cycle of dissatisfaction and suffering. Here's something important to reflect on. Have you ever stopped to think about how much time in your day you spend worried about protecting your image, comparing yourself to others, or trying to feel more important? This cycle, which feels so natural, is what keeps you stuck in a constant state of stress, anxiety, and unhappiness. Now, the good news: you can break free from this cycle. The first step is to notice when the ego is acting. When you feel anger, envy, or frustration, stop for a moment and ask yourself, why am I feeling this? What is my ego trying to protect? For example, if you realize you're feeling jealous of someone, instead of letting that feeling take over, observe what's happening. Maybe your ego is telling you, I'm not good enough. And when you observe that thought, you begin to understand that this voice is just a reflection of the ego. It's not the real you. Another way to break the ego's cycle is to practice detachment. When you stop caring so much about what others think or about the need to always be right, the ego loses its power over you. This doesn't mean you stop taking action or having goals in life. It simply means that your actions come from a calmer and more balanced place, without the need to prove anything to anyone. The first step to breaking the cycle of negative karma is to develop awareness. Most of our actions and thoughts happen automatically. It's like we are on autopilot, without realizing the impact of what we are doing. When someone irritates you, you react immediately. When something doesn't go your way, you complain, feel sad, or get angry. But what if, instead of reacting, you paused for a moment and observed what is happening? That small space of time between the event and your reaction can change everything. Think of this scenario. Someone criticizes you at work, and your first reaction is to defend yourself or feel anger. But instead you pause and reflect. Why am I reacting like this? What is my ego trying to protect? Just by observing, you take away the power that the situation has over you. Suddenly, the criticism doesn't feel so big anymore, and you can choose how to respond without letting negative emotions take control. This pause and observation are fundamental to breaking the cycle of negative karma. When you become aware of your actions and reactions, you realize you no longer need to act impulsively. Instead of feeding anger, resentment, or frustration, you start making calmer and more balanced decisions. In addition to developing awareness, acting selflessly is essential. When you choose to act without expecting anything in return, without seeking recognition or reward, you create actions that come from the heart, not the ego. This might feel difficult at first because we are used to expecting something in return when we do good. But when you act with true kindness and generosity, something incredible happens. You feel a sense of peace and lightness that comes from within. Think of a situation where you help someone in need. If you do it with the intention of appearing to be a good person or to feel important, that action comes from the ego and brings a fleeting satisfaction. But if you help simply because you want to, without expecting anything in return, the action becomes pure. The immediate consequence is a feeling of true peace and happiness, because there is nothing to protect, prove, or expect. Another powerful way to break the cycle of negative karma is through forgiveness. Holding on to anger or resentment towards someone is like carrying a heavy weight on your back. The other person might not even know that you are hurt, but you carry that pain with you every day. When you choose to forgive, you're not doing it for the other person. You're doing it for yourself. Forgiveness dissolves the tension that was stored inside and creates a sense of relief and peace within you. Throughout your day, there are many opportunities for you to choose between acting consciously or automatically. When someone irritates you, when things don't go as planned, or even when you think something negative about yourself or others, these are the small choices that determine the quality of your life. When you observe these situations and choose to respond with more calm, patience, and kindness, you are changing your karma. This doesn't mean you will never again feel anger, envy, or sadness. These emotions are part of the human experience. The difference lies in how you deal with them. Instead of reacting automatically and feeding the suffering, you can choose to observe the feeling, understand where it comes from, and let it go. Over time, these small changes will begin to transform your life. The ego, which once controlled everything, begins to lose its strength. You start to realize that you no longer need to constantly protect yourself or compare yourself to others. This brings a sense of freedom and lightness that you may have never felt before. The suffering that once seemed inevitable begins to fade away because you are no longer trapped in the cycle of negative karma. Understanding and applying this concept in practice doesn't happen overnight. It's a constant process that requires patience and dedication. But over time you will start to notice that your actions, thoughts, and intentions become lighter. Instead of creating more suffering, you will be building a cycle of peace, balance, and happiness. And, in the end, that is the true transformation that karma can bring to your life. When you act with consciousness and selflessness, you're not only helping others, you're helping yourself. You are creating the conditions for a life with less suffering and more inner peace. So, here's the challenge I leave for you. Start observing your actions, thoughts, and intentions. Always ask yourself, is this helping me, or is it creating more suffering? From the moment you make the choice to act with consciousness and kindness, you begin to break the cycle of karma and build a much lighter and more balanced life. With this reflection, we come to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this content, share it with someone who can benefit from it. Leave a comment below sharing what you thought, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Let's learn together to live with more peace, awareness, and harmony. We've reached the end of this video, and now you understand the true meaning of karma. It's not a magical force that punishes or rewards, nor is it something that happens outside of you. Karma means action, and all of your actions, including your thoughts, words, and intentions, have a direct impact on the quality of your life. You saw how the cycle of karma is sustained by the ego. That self, which constantly tries to protect and promote itself, creates a state of constant suffering. Small selfish actions like holding on to resentment, feeling envy, or reacting with anger might seem harmless at first, but they accumulate and create a cycle of dissatisfaction, anxiety, and inner discomfort. The good news is that you have the power to change this. At every moment, you can choose to act consciously, observe your reactions, and make more balanced choices. It all begins with the simple act of stopping and observing. When you become aware of your actions and choose to act with kindness, patience, and generosity, you break the cycle of negative karma. Instead of suffering, you start planting seeds of peace, happiness, and harmony for yourself and those around you. Remember, this transformation is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but every small change matters. Every time you choose to forgive instead of holding on to resentment, every time you treat someone with kindness, even when it's not easy, you are creating positive karma that will shape your life in a much lighter and more fulfilling way. Pause for a moment now and reflect. How have you been acting in your daily life? Are your actions and thoughts bringing you peace or suffering? This is a powerful question you can ask yourself every day to remind you that the power to transform your karma is always in your hands. If you enjoyed this video, share it with someone who can benefit from this message. Sometimes, a simple reflection can be the beginning of a major transformation in someone's life. Leave a comment below and tell me what you thought of this content. I really want to know. Have you noticed how your daily choices impact your well-being and relationships? Your opinion is so important.